I knew something was wrong the moment he wouldn't meet my eyes. Ethan Pierce. Our celebrated CTO, the man who loved hearing himself talk about innovation revolutions and the future of automation, sat across from me, tapping a pen against the conference table like he was impatient with gravity itself. Behind him, the glass walls of the 34th floor glowed with sunrise. But the room felt cold, like someone had opened a window I couldn't see. He finally exhaled and said the line he'd been rehearsing. "You're not aligned with the new direction. The team needs someone more modern." Modern, a word that's sliced cleaner than any insult. 8 years of building the backbone of our systems line by line, safeguard by safeguard. 8 years of late nights, emergency patches, last-minute saves, and political storms that would bury most engineers alive. 8 years of protecting the company from overconfident executives who thought reading half a Gartner report made them visionaries. But apparently, I was no longer modern. I didn't say anything. I just watched the way his fingers curled, how he was bracing for a fight I never gave him. He mistook my silence for defeat. Not realization. Because sitting there, absorbing the blow, something inside me clicked. He truly believed he could replace me. He truly believed that his shiny new experimental systems task force, staffed with influencers disguised as engineers, could handle what I spent years mastering. He had no idea that the $180 million AI integration demo he was preparing, the one he bragged about to the board, the press, anyone with a pulse, was built on architecture he barely understood and a prototype I had intentionally kept compartmentalized. For safety. Ethan thought I was outdated. But technology doesn't crumble. Because it's old. It crumbles. Because someone arrogant thinks they're smarter than the people who built it. And as I walked out of his office for the last time, escorted only by the echo of his forced sigh, a strange calm ran through me. He had no idea what he had just broken, but he would, and it would happen. Publicly. Love. In front of every board member, investor, partner, and journalist he invited to witness his revolution. The moment he fired me, the countdown began. The first morning after getting fired felt strangely quiet. No rush hour alarms, no sprint planning meetings, no Slack messages blinking like anxious little warnings. Just me, my coffee, and a laptop that suddenly had no one demanding miracles from it. But silence is deceptive. My mind wasn't still. It was sorting, recalling, reconstructing everything the company had become in the last 18 months, because that's when the real shift happened. When Ethan arrived, he didn't join the company. He invaded it. A polished disruptor with perfect hair, press-ready quotes, and an obsession with looking like the smartest man in every room. He sold the board on a flashy future AI integration, predictive automation, real-time orchestration of our financial systems. It sounded impressive, but it was brittle. Too fast, too much, too artificial, and I knew it because I had built the core systems he wanted to revolutionize. And core systems are like bones. They don't grow stronger by breaking them. Still, the board loved him. They loved the confidence, the metaphors, the investor-friendly swagger. They didn't care that most of his ideas came from consultants he barely understood. They didn't even care that half the modern team he hired had portfolios prettier than their code. But Ethan needed one thing to make his vision real. Me. And I gave him what I could: boundaries. Warnings, architecture diagrams highlighted in red. But he didn't want boundaries. He wanted fireworks. When I refused to rubber stamp unstable integrations, I became the obstacle. The woman who was too cautious, too attached to legacy systems, too traditional for the new era. Funny, no one said that when I prevented the fraud detection crash that saved the company $40 million last year. Or when I rebuilt the reconciliation engine in a weekend. Or when I trained half his new hires who didn't know the difference between a data lake and a data swamp. But reputations change fast when someone with a louder voice decides they should. Especially when that someone is sleeping with one of the board's advisors. I wasn't supposed to know that. But tech people learn everything. So when he fired me, I didn't just lose a job. I lost the shell I'd held together for years, and yet, under the sting, there was something else. Relief. Because, without me inside, the machine Ethan built would finally show its cracks. I didn't plan revenge. Not at first. I didn't open my laptop to sabotage anything, didn't touch a single line of code. I didn't need to. What was coming was already written into the system subtly, naturally, structurally, the demo he bragged about. The $180 million AI orchestration model? The one meant to transform operational intelligence? It relied on an engine I designed to require human oversight until all modules passed a stability threshold. A threshold his modern engineers didn't even know existed because they never bothered reading. Anything without pastel UI tags or animated flowcharts. He thought I was gone. He thought removing me removed the only warning voice in the room. But what he really removed was the only person who knew how to keep the system standing, and the board had no idea how fragile.
His big moment was not yet, but they would soon. Very soon.
3 days after my termination, the first ripple hit my inbox. A message from Mia, one of the only genuinely talented engineers left under Ethan's rule. The subject line was short, but the subtext was screaming, "Are you awake?" I opened it. Inside was one sentence. "The demo keeps freezing at stage 4. No one knows why." I stared at the screen. A strange chill running through me. Stage 4. Of course. That was the stage where the orchestration engine transitioned from simulated data to live operational modeling. A jump that required a precise handshake between my legacy stabilizers and the new AI inference model, a handshake I had warned Ethan about, a handshake he had ignored. I didn't reply to Mia. I couldn't. Not yet. I wasn't going to be the desperate ex-employee trying to swoop in and look important. That wasn't my story. That wasn't my revenge. My revenge would be silent. I would simply let the truth surface. But the conflict didn't stop at technical failures. It grew teeth. By the next morning, LinkedIn buzzed with suspicious activity. Ethan had posted a sleek promo video about the upcoming live demonstration, calling it a historic leap and the largest AI-driven operational transformation in our industry. He even included a line that made my jaw tighten. "We rebuilt everything from scratch with a modern team." Everything from scratch. A lie so bold it was almost impressive. More messages began to arrive, not from friends, but from people who had once ignored me in hallways. A data lead asking if I remembered that weird threshold thing in the engine. A junior dev apologizing for not listening sooner. Even a project manager I barely knew wrote, "Did you ever get errors during module sequencing?" Errors during sequencing? If they were seeing that, the model wasn't just unstable. It was eating itself internally. Still, I said nothing, and silence, I realized, is its own kind of storm. But the real conflict came when I received a forwarded email. An internal memo leaked by someone I would never identify. It was short, panicked, and undeniably Ethan. "We go live in 6 days. Fix IT. I don't care how." 6 days. 6 days to fix something they didn't understand. Built on an architecture they barely respected. For an audience of investors who fully expected magic on stage, the company was cracking from the inside. And Ethan, too proud to admit he needed the person he'd discarded, tightened every screw until they snapped. His modern team worked nights. Weekends. Probably cried in bathrooms. And still, the engine froze. Still, the sequences collapsed. Still, the stability threshold rejected the new modules. These weren't bugs. These were structural truths. You cannot build a skyscraper on sand and expect it to reach the sky just because the CEO wants it taller. But the conflict wasn't just technical. It was personal. I overheard, through a mutual friend that Ethan had told, the board I left unwilling to adapt. He claimed the system was 99% ready. He blamed delays on employees loyal to old methodologies. He told them the demo would be flawless. Every lie he told was a fuse, burning closer to his own feet, because the moment he removed me, he removed the one person who could have prevented what was coming. and as the countdown to the demo ticked forward, one thing became painfully clear. He didn't need my help to fail. He just needed time. The betrayal didn't hit all at once. It arrived in pieces small enough to ignore, sharp enough to bleed. The first piece came in the form of a forwarded message from an old colleague. A board packet Ethan had prepared for the upcoming demonstration. I scrolled casually at first, expecting the usual flash. But my heart froze when I reached page 7. He credited my work, my architecture, my stabilizer models, my original sequencing engine to his modern systems task force. Not just reworded. Erased. They had taken my diagrams, cropped out my name, replaced annotations, even renamed the modules I built from scratch. Renamed. As if changing their labels changed their origin. And at the bottom of the slide, in bold, confident font, prototype developed exclusively by the CTO and his new team. My hands trembled, not from anger but from something colder. A kind of grief. The kind you feel when someone steals not just what you built, but what you bled for. But that wasn't the worst of it. The second piece came when Mia finally wrote. Again, not a question this time, but a warning. They've locked access logs. Ethan doesn't want anyone to know who built what. Of course he didn't, because the demo wasn't just about technology. It was about ego. It was about ownership. It was about rewriting history in his image. But the third piece, that was the one that cut deepest. A copy of an email Ethan sent to the board during an emergency call. The subject line, addressing stability concerns. The body was a blend of arrogance and manipulation so perfect it read like a strategic confession, crafted by someone who believed he was untouchable.
He blamed me. He said I obstructed modernization. He said I left behind chaotic legacy dependencies.
He said the threshold failures were intentional sabotage by outdated personnel resisting progress. Sabotage. He labeled my warnings as sabotage. My caution as sabotage. My expertise as sabotage. I sat there reading it, pulse thudding in my throat, while the world outside my apartment continued like nothing had changed. Cars moved. People lived. Plans unfolded. But my career, my reputation was being rewritten in real time by a man who couldn't even explain half the systems he claimed to have built. And then the final betrayal. The one that snapped something inside me. A meeting invite leaked by someone on the operations side. A private prep call between Ethan and 2 board members. It included a note: if the demo succeeds, we restructure engineering leadership permanently. Permanently, meaning even if they discovered he lied. Even if the system collapsed later, even if everything I built turned into corporate shrapnel. I would be the scapegoat of record. I understood then. He didn't fire me for being outdated. He fired me to remove the only witness who could contradict his story. He wanted sole ownership of the success. And if things went wrong, he wanted a single throat to blame. Mine. That was the moment something inside me shifted, not into vengeance, not into rage, but into clarity.
He wasn't just dangerous to me, he was dangerous to the entire
company. To the board. To the investors. To every person whose livelihood depended on systems he treated like props. The betrayal wasn't personal anymore. It was systemic. And for the first time since he fired me, I made a decision. I wouldn't interfere. I wouldn't warn them. I wouldn't rescue him. I would let the truth come to light the way it always does, slowly, undeniably, brutally, because the one thing Ethan never understood was this: systems don't betray their creators. They expose the ones who lie about creating them. Revenge didn't arrive as a spark. It came as a quiet alignment of facts, timing, and inevitability, like a tide turning without apology. I didn't need to break anything. I didn't need to touch a single line of code. Ethan's empire was already fragile. All I had to do was let gravity do its work. But letting something fall doesn't mean you don't guide the timing. So I built a plan not to destroy him, but to unmask him. A plan crafted with the same patience and precision I used when designing the architecture he claimed as his own. Step 1 was simple: tell the truth to the people who understood the stakes. Not the board, not the executives, not the loud voices who judged innovation by how shiny something looked on a stage. No. I went to the people who still cared about the work itself. I reached out to 3 engineers I trusted, not friends. Professionals. The ones who stayed late because they understood how dangerous shortcuts were. The ones Ethan ignored because they didn't dress like startup founders. I didn't ask them to sabotage anything. I didn't ask them to leak. I simply asked one question. Have you documented everything? And they had screenshots, logs, crash reports, time-stamped commits, video captures of threshold failures, internal chat threads showing ignored warnings. They had all quietly collected evidence to protect themselves, but none of them had known what to do with it. Step 2 was positioning. Ethan had built his entire narrative around 2 pillars. He rebuilt the system. The demo would prove it. If either pillar cracked, the entire structure fell. So I asked the engineers to do nothing differently. No patches, no shortcuts, no after-hour heroics to save a man who would blame them later. Follow your assigned tasks exactly, I told them. Nothing more, nothing less. Because the system wasn't failing due to a bug. It was failing because of architecture. He didn't understand. All they had to do was stop trying to hold up something that wasn't designed to stand without me. Step 3 required patience, a skill Ethan never had. I waited. Watched. Listened. Every day. Tension inside the company rose. Every day, someone leaked a little more accidentally or purposefully. A project manager mentioned burnout on a public thread. A junior dev complained about impossible deadlines. A QA analyst posted cryptic messages about knowing when to walk away. None of this came from me. But all of it fed the storm. Then came step 4, a subtle move, but the one that sealed everything. I contacted one person outside the company, a well-respected industry analyst, who built their reputation on exposing inflated corporate tech claims. We had spoken once before at a conference, not as friends but as professionals who understood the quiet truth of engineering. If it looks too magical, someone is lying. I didn't give them secrets. I didn't give them private data. I simply asked, "Are you attending the demo next week?" When they said yes, I replied, "Watch the live inference transition. That's where the truth is. No accusations. No evidence. Just a direction. And finally the last step. Not sabotage. Not interference. Just presence. I bought a ticket to the demo. Not to gloat, not to confront him, but because I wanted to witness the exact moment when Ethan realized the difference between a system that runs on hype and a system that runs on reality. A system built by someone who understood its soul. A system he tried to claim as his own. As the day approached, an eerie calm settled over me. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindictive. I felt aligned. This wasn't revenge driven by rage. It was justice delivered by truth. And truth, I knew, was about to walk onto that stage with him, whether he liked it or not. The auditorium looked less like a tech showcase and more like a coronation. Spotlights swept across rows of executives, investors, industry analysts, and journalists. Velvet partitions separated VIP attendees from everyone else. The stage glowed with curved LED screens projecting swirling lines of data, forming a digital halo around the podium. Ethan always wanted a throne. Today, he built himself one. I slipped into my seat near the center aisle, close enough to see the stage clearly, far enough to avoid being noticed. I wore a quiet expression, a neutral color. Invisible, the way he liked me to be when I worked for him. He walked onto the stage to applause that made him stand taller. His smile was polished, confident, practiced like a man certain the universe was about to reward him for existing. I watched him adjust the mic, straighten his jacket, and unfold a perfectly rehearsed speech. "Today," he said, letting his voice fill the auditorium, "we unveil the world's first fully autonomous operational intelligence engine." Applause again. He paused, soaking in the validation. "We rebuilt everything from scratch," he continued. "No legacy drag. No outdated limitations. A pure, modern system, created by a team ready to lead the next era." I felt the words travel through me like a slow burn. There. It was the lie he tattooed onto the company's future. The screens behind him shifted, slick animations, showing arrows, graphs, interconnected flows. Not real architecture, just the cinematic version someone designed to impress people who didn't know better. Then he gestured grandly toward the main console at center stage, a curved workstation surrounded by holographic displays. And now, he said, we'll move into live demonstration. A hush fell across the room. This was the moment he had sold to the board. The moment he promised investors would reshape the company's valuation. The moment he claimed would secure the next decade of growth. He sat at the console, fingers poised dramatically above the controls. Like a conductor about to command an orchestra. My pulse slowed. I knew exactly what was about to happen. Stage 1. System warm-up, a safe phase. No risk. On the screens, soft pulses of light appeared. Numbers scrolled. Simulated data flowed. The audience leaned forward, impressed. Stage 2. Predictive modeling, also safe. Built on stable frameworks I created years ago. More lights. Graphs. Excitement. Stage 3. Data fusion. The room hummed with approval. Ethan smiled, showing teeth. Then
Came stage 4, the stage I warned him about, the
stage his modern team believed they understood, the stage that required a stabilizer. Handshake only. I knew how to maintain. Ethan tapped the command. The shift began for 2 seconds. Everything looked fine, then the first flicker. Barely noticeable, unless you were looking for it. I saw it. Mia, standing backstage, saw it. The analyst I'd messaged earlier leaned forward. Another flicker, slightly longer. The murmurs started small. Ethan's smile faltered, then returned too quickly. Too forced. Minor load adjustment, he said into the mic. That was his first mistake, saying anything at all. He tapped. Again. The screen froze. A collective inhale rippled through the auditorium. He tried again, tapping faster, harder. As if force could rewrite architecture, the system unfroze, but not cleanly. The numbers stuttered, duplicated. Then misalignet. The live modeling engine hiccuped, pulsed red, stabilized. Then pulsed red again. People exchanged glances. One investor whispered, "Is this part of the demo?" It wasn't. Ethan's voice grew tight. Just a minor sync issue, folks. But I knew what was happening. The stabilizer threshold had rejected the AI inference model. It didn't understand its inputs. It didn't trust its outputs. It did exactly what it was designed to do: protect the system from unsafe execution. The next failure was louder. A sharp digital glitch crackled through the speakers. The lights on the console dimmed, then surged, then dimmed again. The screens behind him flickered violently, then displayed a message I had written years ago, never intended for public eyes. Incompatible execution path. System halted for safety. A gasp swept across the room. Board members stood. Another grabbed their phone. Journalists began recording. Ethan's face drained of color so fast it looked like someone unplugged him from the wall. He tried one last command, desperation. In every keystroke. The system didn't just freeze. It crashed. Hard. The giant screens went black with a sound like a digital choke. The auditorium lights flickered. The console delivered a dull, humiliating error tone that echoed like a flatlined heartbeat. Silence. Then the analyst I had tipped leaned back and whispered, loud enough for 3 rows to hear, "Legacy threshold failure. Classic architecture mismatch. This was never rebuilt." The words spread like fire. Investors turned. Board members glared. Reporters stood up in unison. Ethan looked out at the crowd, breathing fast now.
his hands trembling on the edge of the console, his voice cracked around the microphone. This
isn't possible. But it was. It always was. And as the entire $180 million fantasy collapsed around him, he finally understood the truth he'd ignored. You can fire a person, but you cannot fire reality. And reality had just introduced itself to him in front of everyone he wanted to impress. The room was chaos. Investors whispered, some frantically typing into laptops. Journalists snapped pictures and recorded every frame of Ethan's unraveling performance. His modern team froze, staring at lines of code and red alerts they didn't understand. Panic spread like wildfire. Ethan tried to salvage the moment, stammering explanations, blaming network latency, server glitches, anything but the truth. But every phrase came across hollow, rehearsed, desperate. The audience wasn't buying it. The facade cracked too quickly. I stayed in my seat calm, observing. Not gloating, just watching the inevitable unfold. Every warning I'd once given, every line of architecture I'd designed, every safeguard I'd embedded silently rose to speak for itself. The system didn't lie. The data didn't lie. And now the board, the investors, and the press all saw the truth live. Minutes later, a murmured conversation spread. The board would investigate. Ethan's credibility was shattered, and with it his control over the company's engineering decisions.
His boast of a rebuilt system had evaporated.
My contributions, the ones he tried to erase, were quietly whispered about by those who knew the facts. They would eventually be recognized. Not because I said so, but because the work spoke for itself. No hacks. No sabotage. No confrontation. Just patience, foresight, and the truth. I left the auditorium silently. Outside, the city moved like nothing had changed, but I carried a private satisfaction that felt heavier than any applause. I hadn't needed to fight to prove myself. I only needed to wait while reality did the work I always knew it would. Ethan had built his empire on ego, and ego is always fragile under scrutiny. I walked away knowing that some victories aren't celebrated, they're quietly, undeniably earned. The company would rebuild, the board would adjust, and I would move forward, leaving chaos behind, while justice had already quietly taken its course. Sometimes revenge isn't loud. It isn't chaos or confrontation. It's quiet, calculated. I let the system speak the truth while the man who tried to erase me fell in front of everyone.
He wanted to impress. The lesson was clear.
Arrogance can mask itself as brilliance, but it collapses when tested against reality. Expertise and integrity leave traces that cannot be deleted, no matter how polished the lie. I didn't need to fight. I didn't need to shout. The $180 million demo, the board, the press, they all revealed the truth for me. And in that moment, I realized something deeper. Sometimes the most powerful form of revenge is simply to survive with clarity, patience, and precision. This is Revenge Untold, where every deception meets its reckoning. Don't forget to subscribe.